This is video 4. So at this stage we have a basic understanding of the workspace and the panes and so on. We've also got a basic knowledge of the tools, what they do and how they do it, also how to make our own. And by now you should have imported the tools I've distributed to you, brought them into Bluebeam, so now we've got some more taking off tools in the tool chest. But before we get too involved in taking off finally, next thing I'd like to touch on is the spreadsheet, what I call the spreadsheet window down at the bottom here, where all the data is put into. I'll show you how this works and how you can customize it to suit your needs. And I think the best way to do this is to do a couple of quick takeoffs, take off a couple of items. But it's worth mentioning that before you start to take off, you need to plan your takeoff. Obviously, I'm sure you already do that. And me personally, I will look at a scheme, look at how the drawings are presented and the way the information is available to me. And I'll decide to either go with an elevational approach or a traditional plan girth approach. Further videos I'll show you examples of both this, and to a degree you'll use a combination of both anyway, but we all work differently, and there are times also when you don't want to drill down into real finite detail. You just need the ability to give a detailed enough but competent and qualified estimate. So let's crack on with that. I've already got two drawings open here and I've calibrated them, as you can see, just for speed. I've got a small plot plan and I've got a small elevation. Just for this exercise, we'll just treat this as a flat elevation. We won't worry about the bays for now. So I'll just take off part of the perimeter here so you can see how the spreadsheet window performs at the bottom. It's worth mentioning as well, as a sort of a house bashing bricklayer, a lot of the times the groundwork has done the substructures, and you really only need to measure the splash courses, is what I'm doing here. So let's imagine we've taken all we need from there. As you can see, the girth is down at the bottom there. There's my length. And this column here gives me the total of the measurement overall, as well as if there were several of these in this column, this bold one at the top here would tally all the subsequent dims. You'll see that when I do some window deducts on the next one. This one here, incidentally, is just my back check. If you notice, that's upside down, but you can play around with the text on these as much as you like. You can drag them out the way. You can do all sorts with Bluebeam. It's just phenomenal. So elevationally, as I said, it's already calibrated. Let's grab the area of the facework. I'm only going to measure supers down to damp. Okay, that's my front elevation. Let me deduct a couple of windows. Explain how that works. So I've got my window deduct measurement tool. As you can see, I can drag from corner to corner, or I can click corner to corner. If I have a very repetitive elevation with lots of the same items, you can also cut and paste. That really does speed things up when you've got a lot of fenestration to work with. So let's imagine that we've taken off everything we need to take off on both these drawings. And where do we go now? We want to combine these into one. So as you can see in this tab here, I've got that length measurement is my girth check, my scale check. I've got my half B walling and I've got my deducts. If you notice that the blue subject line is highlighted, this is like filtering in a spreadsheet. That's the filter order that it's going to output the data in. And you notice I've got all these other columns here. These are configurable from this menu at the columns menu, where you can turn stuff on and off that you need and don't need. As you can see, I'll export everything with it still in so you can see the difference in outputs. Then I'll come back and redo it without it. So how do we get this out into a format where we can get it into a spreadsheet? Well, the first thing we need to do is combine both pages into one, and that's called stapling. How we do that is we go up to File and we click on the Combine icon. We add the open files only, that's all we need, and they'll give you the file names there. They should match the drawing numbers there, so they do. But nothing else is open, so you know it's just those two that are going to be added. So okay, and if you notice, it kicked us out into a third tab, Document 1. Go ahead and name that straight away. Let's call it Flats Elevation, so we know what we're working with. I've misspelt that, but and a good habit to get into as well from the get-go is making sure you're still in that same tab. Right click it, close the other tabs. Now it's asking, do you want to save changes to the following PDFs? Say no, because if you do say yes, your original tender drawings will be overwritten with the markups, and then you won't be able to differentiate between the marked up drawing that you've created and the originals. And there's a reason for that. I want to show you why you want to keep those separate, and that will all become apparent. So say no, get rid of that. Okay, change the view so we can see what we're dealing with. Right, so how do we get this data down here out into a spreadsheet? Well, we finished taking off, as I said, so we have to export the data from the spreadsheet in a database format, and this is done using comma separated variables file. There are other options here that are really for other disciplines like architects, people making comments on drawings and designs. There's a whole raft of stuff here that's useful, but we don't need it just yet. We're only concerned with the CSV summary. So go ahead and click on that. You've probably seen CSV in email lists and address books, that kind of thing. So we've clicked Export to CSV, a dialog window pops up, and there's several options that are pre-ticked here. Just leave them as they are. You'll get to know what these are for as you get used to the program. This one here will automatically stick the unit of measure behind the width, the height, the area in its own separate column, so it doesn't muddy the waters in Excel, and you'll see that when we kick it out. So let's go ahead, CSV it. Notice it's named it the same as I named the drawing. Save it into whatever folder you're working in. Keep them all together, and we'll go through housekeeping as well a bit later on. So you can see the output it's giving you, and when it's done, it's chucked out pretty much everything there. You can see, so if we compare this with so you have label, you have subject, you have tick mark, colour, author, creation date, so on and so forth, right across over to our measurement window. Now if you notice here, I made a bit of an error here. When I exported this, I had label filtered, and what that will do, it will output the data in the order in which you took it off. As you can see, these are a little bit jumbled. I need to go back to subject, which is what how I should have had it in the first place. I also want to get rid of all this superfluous information. So let's get rid of tick, colour, author, creation date, and just leave the basics. Label is handy to leave in place. Subject is the tool, basically, as you're aware, and these other ones are all just the counts. Measurement will give you the measurement of the area tool, the length tool, all combined in one figure, and you'll see why that's important in a minute. Say for instance also you wanted to annotate your takeoff as you went along on the fly, and say you wanted to differentiate between first floor windows, second floor windows. In the label column you can just add annotations so that once they're out into the spreadsheet you can separate those out as well, because occasionally, say for a block of flats, you might have 140mm inner skin and 100mm inner skin on the subsequent floors. Now if you've taken off elevation and you want to go through the wall, you'll need to differentiate between those thicknesses later on in the takeoff. It's however you can think, however you take off, you can apply it to the tools in Bluebeam. So let's go ahead and re-export that as we did previously. Leave markups and totals. Now if the other one's closed, which it should be, it will overwrite. It's given us the same name. And actually I didn't have it closed, so let me close it. Don't save it because we don't want it. Go through that process again. Flats elevation. Do we want to replace it? Yes, we do. We do. Excuse me. And you can see here it's a little bit cleaner. So let me just go ahead and filter some of this out so we can read it more readily. You don't really need these units. I left them in there just for demonstration purposes. These columns here with the brackets round are the totals. I just use these as a back check, make sure everything's in there and it's all tallying up. And as you can see in the half B perimeters, and there's a 1 in a bracket, that means there's 1 dim in that section. In the length measurement, there's 2 dims. These are my calibration lines. They don't actually mean anything. So we can go ahead and get rid of those. Delete the columns. You can see here in the window deducts, I've got 4 in a bracket, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 window deducts. And again, if I wanted to go ahead and be anal and separate floor by floor, I've got the facility to do that there. So I've checked, I've got everything I want. Now I just go ahead and create a bill on the fly from these items. So I don't need the width of my area because I measured that as an area. I've just got the area there. But if you notice, measurement gives you the area. Measurement gives you the length. Measurement gives you the area of the deduct. So rather than delete these, because you may need to refer back to them, just hide them basically. Now you've just got your basic bill here. So there's my perimeters. So that's my face work. So just knock up a quick bill from this. They're my deducts. Okay. So, for instance, so now we've got it out into a spreadsheet. Don't forget we're still in CSV. It's important to remember that. Before you go too much further and do too much tidying, it's usually a good idea to save this into Excel, because if you don't, if you save it directly into CSV and leave it as it is, the data will not be of much use to you, and you'll basically have to re-export it and redo it all, reconfigure it all again. So go ahead and pick File, Save As, change the file type to Excel, and just do away with that file extension name there. I tend to call mine DIMS, and as part of a housekeeping exercise, it's a good habit to get into. I suggest you do the same, and you'll see why as we progress. So save. Now my spreadsheet saved itself, I can go ahead and manipulate my quantities. So if I want to just expand on this bill, let's just say quant, unit, rate, extension. And it's worth mentioning, once you've got several of these in a sort of a catalogue already built up, you can reuse them, or you'll get to know. So my quant is going to be that minus that. Metre squared, let's call it 40 quid, equals that times that. Okay, currency. Your usual Excel stuff, tidying it all up. Tell that that's currency. So I've got my perimeter. Say I want to do my splash, so let's call it splash. You can manipulate it here, or you can create a tool called splash. It's up to you. So I'm going to go for 0.3. 450mm DPC tray base, and I can just go ahead and go equals that times that, and it's all the same as my little bill. My DPC equals the girth times 0.45, and again so that's my little mini bill. Named as flats elevation. That's a very, very basic way of doing what you need to. Save that. One thing I mentioned also earlier is naming the files for good housekeeping purposes. What I also tend to do is I embed the drawing I've just taken off into the sheet I've just worked on, and then what that does, it gives you a marked up copy of the tender drawing that you've based your bid on. Hopefully you're familiar enough with Excel to have this already set up. So you just basically embed your object, and what you do is go ahead and get the PDF that you've saved. I think we called it flats 3 markup, and embed it in the drawing. Now anyone you send this to has then got a copy of what you've taken off and marked up, but we'll elaborate on that some more. Let's close this down, save that. Okay, so this is already saved, so you can just go ahead and get rid of it. And in video 5, we'll move on to the next step in taking off.